See, I'm not as bad as Ryan Mullally. I found it quick. Hello! Welcome to the Normal America Show. Host robnoerr. I am feeling a little ill ever since last night. I slept most of today. I pulled my shit together for the extravaganza, and then my son had a ball game. I got to that. But most of the day I've just been throwing up, and I don't know. It's a weird feeling because I don't feel food sick. It's not like violent like that. But I also don't feel like other times where I've been sick in the stomach where you have like a fever or something. Like I don't have a headache. It's just nauseous and tired. My face is swollen. I'm fat. That's that's fat. Oh no! What? I've swollen up. Holy shit! I'm losing my hair. Ah! No. I know I could take a day off. I thought about doing a chair stream. I was very close to it, but I was like, fuck it. I was always of the mindset, as long as you're not contagious, spreading shit to other people, you go to work, even if you're sick. You know? What's the difference? As if I'll put on a shittier show than normal. Oh no, I'm sick. I can't fucking hit whip songs on the play. And let's be honest, that's what did it. I don't know if it's being in a fucking city, DC made me sick, or if it's whip songs. Cyclosporiasis that's going around. I don't know. You know? I can't think of what I would have done to get contagious, you know? Went to a ball game. I guess you get sick there, but, you know. A gay bath. Oh, wait. No, I didn't. No, I mean, I guess I was around a bunch of people. I haven't asked anyone else at the bachelor party that I was at if they got sick, so maybe they did as well. But it's been pretty good. No one in my house has been sick. Candace put the hex on me. That's what it is. She does. She called some of her friends at Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters to make me sick. Whatever. Who gives a shit about me? I'm worthless anyways. I didn't show any parts of my anatomy to anyone. Damn super spreaders. That's right, Kay Thomas. Chaperionosis? Huh? I don't know. Why do you guys gotta make everything about that guy? You know? It's possible that we get to... I'm not the type of dude that has to keep bringing up little clips of him and shit. You know, it's just...
women in messages, has a weird infatuation with men's organs. He's a syndicated radio host, and it's all about respect. He's Brian Shaprio.
Yeah. It is funny, isn't it? I got sent. I was in the bathhouse with Senator Graham. Leave the man alone. He passed away. I'm going to be writing a strongly worded letter condemning ex-phobic. The bastard. We'll see how long we go. I don't know. There's stories to cover. I actually did a whole extravaganza episode with basically not talking about the Tyler Robinson trial. It was kind of nice. Now we're talking the news. Like, can we be honest? Like, we're just going to be brutally honest tonight, right? Look, the fucking whip song stuff sucks ass. It really does. Half of you watching right now don't stick around for it. It's because you're smart. The rest of us are fucking stupid. It sucks. However, can I shit on all of us? And I'm shitting on myself as well. And all of you. And can I do that for a second? We're all friends here. We're enemies. Whatever, same difference. Politics is fucking stupid, isn't it? You get boring. So it's like, I don't know. I think that the Tyler Robinson case is very important. I think what happened to Charlie Kirk is monstrous. What's happening to his family is monstrous. Obviously, I've said my piece on that. But at some point, how many days in a row do you want to talk about the same shit? It's one thing if you're like honoring something or moving the ball forward in a good way. We're just spinning our wheels, playing whack-a-mole with a different conspiracy every day, you know? So it's like, wow, the news cycle's moved on. So what do we have to pick from? Iran, ICE shutting down again because some fucker got shot driving his car towards ICE trying to flee, or the 2020 election. It's just like, Now listen, I understand. There's different information in all these. Each situation's done, but my goodness, I feel like I'm in a bad Groundhog Day-esque movie. The daylight savings bill. You know, it won't affect me, if I'm honest. I would get rid of it. Yeah, that's what I heard, Imaginarium, yeah. Who called it first? Bam! Well, actually, Catherine Herridge. But if you watched the show last night, I was like, just going to bring up the shit Catherine Herridge was talking about in April about the Intel community covering up China interfering in the 2020 election. That's what it'll be about. I have my sources. What are my sources? Well, one time I was mentioned positively on the Joe Rogan program. Think about that. So think of how connected I must be. Also, I was doing the extravaganza with Mr. E, and we were just bantering. And he had said that I was late because I was in the bathroom. And I came up with a brilliant plan. What if I just green screened my background and did this whole show in my bathroom just sitting on the toilet? Maybe put a little refrigerator over here. I'd never have to get up. And you'd never know. Like, I have the toilet painted green so that it looks like I have a chair here, but this is actually green screen. There's actually a little flusher right here. You know? I don't know. The original hooded you. Gas prices, food prices, energy, electricity. Yeah, shit's high. Although, if you're to believe the data, we had the lowest CPI inflation since April 2020, I think. Came in today. Replace chair with toilet. Dude. I don't know. Now I'm sort of regretting getting rid of chair. It was one thing. You want to know? Look, this is going to be a dirty episode, I could tell. You want to know why I'm getting rid of chair? You want to know who to blame? Biggest drop. I'm sorry, Gigi. Yeah. What do you there's a person to blame for me getting rid of chair. It's not me. Can you guess? It smells like farts. That would be my fault. I don't know. I don't think it does. Is it Brian Chaprio? Nope. Is it Ava Rice? Nope. Is it the wife? No. It's worse than all of them. You want to know who it is? That's right. Mr. E. That's right. That's who's to blame. And I'll explain why. You see, formerly, I was just a guest host on the extravaganza. And he claims, he would always complain that my chair made too much noise as I'd be. He's like, you got it in a chair. You know? And I'm the guest host. What can I say? But now I'm the fucking host. So if my chair's creaky, who gives a fuck? I'm the host. I am the host now. So maybe, fuck mystery. Maybe I'll keep this chair. Although the new one does look comfy. It's that one right there. It's the lean back. Can you guys hear it? I'm just going to do this for the next hour. No, I'm right. That's enough. Mystery, that's right. Oh, man. Yeah, he is the loudest. I type loud. Mr. E's the loudest motherfucking type. I picture that Mr. E's got like a giant keyboard that's like the keys are fist sized and he's just like. Tick, 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 tick. That's right. I have an ego. Yeah. Oh, see, you didn't hear it. All right. Hang the chair up on the wall. Oh, man, I feel like ass. Well, what are we going to talk about? Yeah, Ryan types loud too. Yeah, the whip songs are horrible. Look, I mean, I don't get it. Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I make a bunch of money with the whip songs. That's nice. But I imagine it's how, like, what was the name of the band? You know the band Warrant? You didn't think I was going to take it here, huh? Does anybody know the band Warrant? If so, tell me a song that the band Warrant sang, if anyone knows. I took a little Pepto. Oh, look at that. Yeah, they sang this. Everybody knows they sang the song Cherry Pie. So I think I could have made this up in my head, but I don't think so. I saw an interview with the lead singer years later. He's kind of a little heavy set. You got kind of, yeah, Exobic gets it, right? And I think this was the story, if I remember correctly. They didn't write that song. Like, they're putting out an album of songs that they liked, that they did, and the studio is like, here, do this one, Cherry Pie. And they're like, eh. And they did the video, and it's hypersexualized. It's like, you know, some model with like a cherry pie dropping in her crotch, and they sing it. They're like, whatever. And then the rest of their career, that's like the only song people knew. And so they'd be like, hey, we got all these great songs we worked on for you. And people are like, shut up, play Cherry Pie. And they felt like artists that created this shit, you know, like good stuff. And here was this pile of shit, corporate bullshit they had to sing. That's how I feel with the whip songs. I'm painting a tapestry every day here with my content, and no one gives a fuck, or very few people. Everyone's like, play Cherry Pie. That's the whip songs. And I'm like, ugh. But you do it. I mean, I guess it's better for Warrant for people to come and want to hear the song Cherry Pie than not to come. So you play the fucking song. I don't know. Yeah, allegedly I do other stuff. You guys should check it out someday. Nah, it wasn't Bret Michaels. Oh, he was on the show. Oh, look at this guy wants to debate me. Okay, what do you want to debate? Son Chazal. I'm happy to debate. Just give me an idea of what you're trying to debate. Because if it's not really a debate, I'm not interested. If you're like, I'll debate you on your eyebrows are the fucking worst thing I've ever seen. It's like, look at these motherfuckers. You want to debate universal basic income? Okay, fuck it. Why not? There's a topic. Whoopee! Click that link. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, let's read the few super chats I've got. Truth Revolt, what's up, my man? $5 says 6 Rob's our least favorite Rob. Feel better, sir. I had the same thing last week. Thank you, man. And then Birdie the dog, $10 says I care about you, Rob. Thank you. Wow, someone cares about me. All right. Hey, I see in the background. Can you give me a thumbs up if you were the guy that son? Okay. All right. What's up, my man? Should I call you son or the name you have wrote there? Whatever you prefer. I don't care.
What was that?
Do you want me to call you the name you have written on the screen there or son? Either way is fun with me.
Either one is fine. You can
I
call me
just didn't
Alex.
want to say your real name or some shit. And
You can say my real name. That's fine.
Okay. So what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. So my friend Tommy said I should debate you about universal basic income, and
Excellent.
I guess watches you pretty regularly. I've never seen anything by you. I'm hanging out right now in a Home Depot parking lot. I just returned some shower rods right before they closed. So
I had to go and get a wax ring a couple weeks ago, and then a connector for the back of my washing machine. It's like an hour away to the nearest Home Depot, but it's weirdly right next to a Lowe's. I like to think that there's a rivalry that like keying each other's cars.
There's an economics explanation for why that kind of thing happens.
You think? Because it has to do with like sort of the geographic area of people expecting certain products, so they all lump in a certain area.
Yeah, I mean, the simplified model is imagine there's like a line and everyone lives on the line, and then everyone needs a gas station, and then there's two competing gas stations. Mm-hmm. And then, the question is, where do you if you own a gas station, where do you optimally place your gas station? Well, the closer you move to the other guy, the more customers you're going to get, right? Because you're going to be on average closer to people than the other guy because he's all the way at the end of the line and you're closer to the middle of the line. So everyone moves toward the middle of the line until the two gas stations are right across the street from each other.
Yeah, I can see it. I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's funny. That happened in our town, the little town I'm from, and you had, I don't know what you call them, the islands, like above the gas pump, they keep the rain off your head. It fell down on this BP.
Oh, no.
And they rebuilt it. It was like down for like 3 months, so they rebuilt it, which I assume costs a decent amount of money. And as they were finishing, a Sheetz, which is the big like gas station here in Pennsylvania, went up right above them. And so they had it rebuilt for like 2 months, and like, yeah, we're shutting down. I was like, oh, that's the way it is. It's like 4 gas stations right there, and then the rest of the town. But it makes sense.
And right near my house is a Wendy's and a McDonald's right next to each other.
Yeah. All right, so universal basic income. I assume you support it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's. I guess there's 2 ways to look at it. There's the specifics of what the proposal would be, and then there's just the general. Regardless of working out the fine details, is it a good idea? Wherever you want to go with it's fine by me.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious to you. I know there's, a lot of people talk about UBI these days and different people think about it differently. How would you define UBI?
For me, I think it is. I know that there's an impression that it means money, like sending you actual money. But for me, I think the spirit of it is, and there could be some form of UBI that's just like basic necessities sent to each individual every month that you would need as a minimum to survive. So, for example, food stamps could be a form of UBI in that world.
Okay. So you're defining UBI differently than I am. I called in to talk about the thing that I call UBI,
okay,
which is most definitely about money. And the way I would define it is that it's the government, doesn't necessarily have to be the government, but let's just say the government, is the government giving the same amount of money to everyone on an ongoing basis.
Okay, that's fair. And like, I know that that's one of the proposal, probably the most common proposal. And there is definitely a difference between that and including other things like health services, food stuff. But yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And I would be against that just to.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's get more into just clarity on the definition. Importantly, it's not about people's basic needs. It's a mechanism for distributing money into the economy. It's not a particular amount of money, right? So if it's $2 a month to everyone, that's a small UBI. If it's $1 million a day to everyone, that's a very large UBI. Like they both count as UBI.
Sure.
So then a question we can ask is, instead of saying, do we support UBI or not, we could say, well, what is the optimal level of UBI for the economy? And if you don't support UBI, then perhaps your answer is 0. That 0 is the optimal level of UBI.
Sure. That's what I would go with. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm curious, I know you already mentioned basic needs. So I'm imagining that when you think about the problem that UBI is supposed to solve or intended to solve, or that supporters of it are imagining that it will solve, you're imagining probably that it has something to do with basic needs, poverty, maybe something that like Andrew Yang stuff, compensating for people losing their jobs to automation and AI, or, that kind of thing. Is that right?
Yeah, I've heard 2 arguments. That, I think, is the argument that's most common and the reason that most people would suggest UBI. There is another argument, which perhaps you're going to make, which has to do with sort of, I'm no economist, so forgive my clunky language, but sort of a liquid amount of cash circulating that we put out there, and it sort of supposedly drives consumer spending, investment, etc., because it's a mechanism to flow cash. So you're really not concerned if Daryl over here doesn't get food. Instead, he spends it all on booze because it wasn't really about meeting Daryl's basic needs. It's about some broader economic principle.
Yeah, that's more in the direction of the argument I'm making. It's not exactly the same thing. And then there's another one that I should mention, which is also not the argument that I'm making, which is kind of the more Milton Friedman perspective of you have all of this, clunky bureaucracy, kind of managing the social safety net, and it's really inefficient, and you could kind of consolidate various welfare programs and just hand people cash instead. That's kind of what he advocated.
And to be clear, like, I'm assuming you're advocating UBI as a basically non-changing the status quo other than UBI. So I could be talked into like, look, we spend X amount of dollars on social safety net programs. Instead of that, we just like find a way to send money out. And then if you're a dumbass and you choose, hey, I went out and bought a bunch of sugary sodas as opposed to, saving up for healthcare, tough shit, that's on you. I could be talked into something more akin to that. Ultimately, I think in a perfect society, that would just be a stepping stone to where we needed to go. But I could be talked into that. But it doesn't matter because you say that's not what you're advocating for anyway. So.
Yeah, and it's interesting though, because I am advocating changing something about the status quo, but it's definitely not what you're imagining. It's not what you said just now. And that's because I think you're doing something that a lot of people who think about UBI do, both supporters and opponents, detractors, which is kind of thinking of it as a welfare program or a social assistance scheme or something like it. Like it's in that category of thing.
Sure.
Whereas I would put it more in the category of something like monetary policy. So, for example, let's say we get to a point where, and this has been, happening recently, where, it seems appropriate based on kind of the policymakers and the experts and all of that, for the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. Instead of lowering interest rates, what you can do is increase the UBI. So for me, would the
Fed still exist in your world?
Yeah.
They just wouldn't have the ability to raise or lower rates.
They would have the ability to, but the idea would be that you'd want to get interest rates at a level that's compatible with more efficient labor allocation and more efficient capital allocation, in the sense that you wouldn't want to lower interest rates for the purpose of pushing money into the economy and boosting demand, right? You would want the labor market to be for allocating labor, not to push money to people through jobs and wages. You would want the financial sector to be about real investment, like you're actually developing capacity for your economy and building things that, make other things and that kind of thing. You wouldn't be, okay, let's make it cheaper for all the businesses to borrow because we want those businesses to create jobs and hire workers and push money out to them through wages. Because that is a recipe for a lot of problems, including, basically, having people do unnecessary work because the work exists to push them the money. And then it also causes the problem of financial instability, right? You're making funding markets much cheaper, and that can cause asset price bubbles and liquidity problems. You can get like a crisis like 2008, that kind of thing.
Admittedly, not an economist, but let me just lay some, make sure I'm trying to steelman your position as much as possible. So you would not change the role of the Fed necessarily in their powers. You're just saying that it would take away the necessity for them to raise and lower rates. And you're not necessarily speaking to anything to our social safety net system changing it. So you're not suggesting, hey, we do this and then we could lower Social Security payments, or we do this and we could lower Medicaid payments and we could lower. You're saying this is irrespective of that. Those programs still exist basically untouched. Your plan is to do this, and ultimately with the goal of it would drive labor participation, or I'll leave you explain exactly why, but it's more of a financial policy or monetary policy akin to the Fed raising and lower interest rates. Is that basically a steel man of what you're saying so far?
Yeah, it's macroeconomic policy.
Okay.
That's right.
So what is the real, I understand your concerns with the Fed raising and lower rates. I think a lot of us share that. Give me, though, the best case. And remember, I'm sort of a redneck idiot, but give me the best case, in your own words, of why exactly we should do this, what the net positive outcome would be.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm a non-redneck idiot, so we can
there you go.
at least connect on the idiot.
Well,
yeah. So the idea is that, kind of what I described, I would say is problematic. So essentially, the economy needs money flowing through it at all times in order to keep going. If you turn off the money source, then the economy collapses and money stops working properly, and you have, a deflationary spiral, all kinds of problems. So the economy needs a source of money, and the current source of money is this monetary policy stuff. So sometimes you hear about, oh, the government's printing money or something like that when it, runs a deficit and spends more than taxes, that kind of thing. Really, most of our money is being printed by the private financial sector. So the banking system, yes, but also there are plenty of, financial institutions that are issuing liabilities that allow people to make payments. And it's essentially, most of the money printing is happening in the private financial sector. And it is being induced by the Fed, the central bank, making credit conditions easier. And the reason they're doing this is because they want people to have jobs and they want people to have money, not just money, but money in the form of wages from jobs. So you have, these frameworks, these economic frameworks that are designed around the idea that people have to get their money through jobs. So we use economic policy to generate jobs for people and push money out to them through wages. There are ways to do that. I'm not in favor of doing this at all. I am not in favor of full employment. I think that's a mistake. I would want people to work only when we benefit from the product of the labor instead of because we want to hand them money. I think if we want to hand people money, we should just hand people the money. And that's what UBI is about for me. But, there are ways to create useless jobs for people to generate make work and hand them money that are not disruptive to the financial sector. They're not going to generate, asset bubbles and liquidity crises and all of that. But that's not what we choose to do. Instead, what we choose to do is we choose to push all this money out into the market through lending in the private financial sector, in the private banking system, because the Fed, or the mechanism is that the Fed makes it easy for everyone to borrow. And that creates financial instability. It creates excess investment beyond what's actually productive and useful, and it creates excess employment beyond what's productive and useful. So you're essentially forcing people to work as an excuse to pay them instead of, just letting the market hire people when there's actually something useful for them to do. Right.
I have to say, I'm skeptical right off the gate because in order for this plan to work, what would be necessary would be altruistic, hyper-competent people managing the amount of money that we would need to send to each person to solve the problem of banks lending money, which they could then use through fractional reserve to add to the M2 money supply. I don't know how you would stop banks doing that. They're still going to have a financial incentive themselves to lend out this money. So unless through, policy change, you stop banks being able to do that, there's going to be a huge problem. And I don't think that you want to stop banks from being able to lend money out in this sense, because then the positive reasons that we allowed banks to do that in the first place, whereas I could use my future potential earnings to create a business now to, multiply what my wealth would be, will be disincentivized. Furthermore, given that you're not changing the status of the Federal Reserve's ability to inflate or contract the money supply, I'm afraid all you're doing is just adding another step of the same people that have mismanaged our currency to the point where it's been devalued and screwed over the middle class. You're just giving them another tool that they'll be able to utilize. Politicians will run on changing from giving you $1,000 a month to $2,000, and then we'll end up with hyperinflation even faster. I agree with you that crippling deflation can be a problem, but man, if we're looking at the problems that we have in the past 20, 30 years, it's the exact opposite. So a better way to manage the system you're talking about, I think, is to take out a bunch of excess money that is inefficient in the form of social safety nets, and we're paying people to basically stay at home and do nothing, kick out the people that are doing cheap labor that they would have to do those jobs instead, and have more critical controls over the Fed. Maybe we even talk about something as getting rid of the income tax and the flat taxes things. I know it's out there that would have a chance to solve that, or going back to a non-fiat currency. I think all those things would probably, at least auditing the Fed and having more management over them, would have a better chance to solve these problems.
So none of the stuff you've said is that out there. It's all stuff that I think about and have thought about. I think you are right that we certainly don't want to be okay. So the idea we don't want to be we don't want to be regulating banks. We don't want to be telling them that they can't lend. I think that's a mistake, right? They should always be allowed to lend. What we do instead, and it's just kind of the opposite of what we're doing now, is that we influence the market by participating in the market. And that's what the Fed does, right? They influence the market by participating in the market, and it changes the price of things, which changes the incentives for banks. So if interest rates are higher, they're going to lend less. If interest rates are lower, they're going to lend more.
Sure.
And what's happening now is that the Fed is suppressing interest rates to, keep funding prices lower so that businesses borrow more and hire more workers, et cetera. UBI would just be instead of that, instead of trying to kind of keep interest rates artificially low, right? So it's not, you don't have to tell banks they're not allowed to do something. You just make it less profitable by participating in the market yourself and pushing the prices around.
So two things. One, I am not a libertarian, but I do think as a general rule of thumb, I start on the principle of less intervention is best. And so your plan is a massive amount of government intervention.
Is it?
Yes, I think absolutely. You just said that we're trying to get it out of a private industry and we're having the government itself be the one that's investing in this stuff. So this is clearly, by your own admission, it's more government intervention. And the other thing is, I don't think it solves the fundamental problem, right? Which is that the people that are trying to intervene are not competent or are not altruistic, and you're just adding another mechanism. For example, an attempt at this could be something akin to this. Tell me if I'm wrong. During COVID, we had sort of a little experiment of this called PPP loans. And basically the principle was, didn't matter what your business was, if you met certain metrics, you were allowed to get these loans, which the terms of which would be forgiven. So they kind of weren't loans. They're really just grants as long as you met. And what happened with that program? Well, they estimate now as some as 25 to 30% of that program was fraud. It was people from outside the country that were getting this money. You've just created a program that presumably, we haven't got to the amount you're suggesting, but if it's anything like $500, $1,000 a month times 35 million people, we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars, probably trillions a year going out the window. And how much fraud are we willing to accept? 25, 30%? And we have to assume that people are setting those numbers in a way that is intuitive, that would be the most efficient for our market, that would then force banks to readjust. I just think that it's a massive, massive, massive government program that'll be rife with fraud. And we can see when the Fed itself is the proof. You've just basically created, instead of like the Federal Reserve, we call it like the federal printers or the federal money lenders. Same idea. And, actually different, because you would have the government run it as opposed to a private bank, which is the Federal Reserve. But yeah, I just don't think it solves the fundamental problem.
Am I accurate in guessing that you are anti-Fed?
Yes, I'm not a Fed fan. Correct.
Okay. All right. So I should keep that in mind when I'm making my points. Like, don't worry, it's going to be just like the Fed. I shouldn't say that.
Well, do you think the Fed could act politically?
Do I think the Fed can act politically?
Yeah. How about have they? Do you think the Federal Reserve has acted politically?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a huge history of the Fed acting politically. And there's this story, it might be apocryphal, of, what was it, LBJ, I think, punching William McChesney Martin. Yeah, I don't think he actually punched him, but they may have pushed each other or something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure it was exaggerated. But given that, what would stop your program from being political? Like, you could easily, for example, the stimmy checks that were being suggested. You remember in 2020, Democrats were basically like, we'll send you $1,500 if you vote for us. And everyone was like, that sounds great. And then, of course, it didn't quite work out that way. If we have a program that's like, look, the government's going to send each and every person a check of a certain amount every month, what would stop the political impetus for the guy running and be like, I'm going to double that check. I'll triple it. I'll quadruple it. And you could quickly see how this spirals out of control and causes inflation.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That is an important concern. And it's a concern you should have with monetary policy as well.
Which is why I say better to leave it more to private institutions. Now, I have significant problems with fractional reserve lending in the way that it's been done. And I don't know if a lot of people know. You are actually absolutely correct when it comes to private institutions, in effect, creating the money. Right? Like I don't know if you know this. You seem like you might know this. There is an amount of dollars that exist electronically, and we only have physical printed dollars of like a percentage of that. So it's something like, if everyone tomorrow would call into the banks and be like, okay, I want my money, there's literally not enough money in print because we allow these banks to basically electronically create money. There are significant problems. I don't disagree. But better to manage that system and manage what the Fed's doing now than to create this other whole ball of wax, which I'm afraid will just be an easier method to see all the problems of inflation, of politicizing this monetary policy. Now you're just putting it into the hands of Congress people and a president that's going to be like, shit, man, I don't care. Like, because to me, the big problem right now is with our financial policy, no one really gives a shit about like being prudent and being fiscally responsible, because you're just trying to win in the here and now. Right? So it's like, yeah, who gives a shit if we're kicking the can down the road in 20 years from now? I'll be out of office. I don't give a shit. This would be that on steroids. It would just be like, whatever. I'll just send as much money as I want to every person in my constituency and just be like, yeah, vote for me. The other guy wants to be fiscally prudent. That's stupid. That's less money for you. That's how I see it.
Yeah. And I mean, you're not wrong, right? And that's why, I mean, like, obviously the Fed has had has done political things and had political motivations in the past. It's also true that, especially starting, I don't know, maybe with Paul Volcker in the early 80s, that there has been a culture of kind of political independence of the Fed. It's not like officially written into the rules, but they realized, that some of the stuff you said happened, right? In the 1970s with stagflation and all that. I think there were a lot of things going on. But one of the things going on was that the Fed was being pushed around by politics, right? And it didn't go well. And I think the Fed and other central banks had to kind of learn that and had to kind of learn how to, I'm not saying that it's perfect, and I'm not saying that it won't go back to being political again and we won't have the exact same problem again. But there is, like, ideally you have these experts who are technocrats, and they know what they're doing, and they are shielded a little bit from Congress, or a lot bit from Congress and from the politics that are going on. And we would want the Fed to be like that as much as it can be, and we would want I'll call it the UBI authority, the institution responsible for calibrating the UBI and keeping it at the optimal level for the economy, that kind of thing. You would want that to be politically independent as well. Is that achievable? I don't know. But what's the alternative, right? Let's not even talk about UBI.
Real quick, just on would you just have the Fed decide that? Like, could the Fed accept? Because the Fed is a private institution. Because if you would create a government agency, it's hard to not have it be political, because whoever is overseeing it would be appointed by politicians. I suppose you could do something like the Supreme Court, be like, well, we'll appoint people for life. And that way that, they don't have to necessarily worry about politics. Clearly that won't solve the problem, but it goes a way to alleviating some of the concerns. If this was a board, for example, that was appointed every 2 years, you'd quickly see how it would get out of hand.
Exactly,
right? People would be like, well, fuck, we're going to win and appoint these people that will send you more money. So I'm not saying there aren't ways to alleviate it, but would your idea to allow the Fed to do this? So it would be more of an outside the scope of Congress or the president really having much influence on it?
I'd probably create a second institution that is analogous to the Fed in its political independence, because the Fed is more than just, it's a bank, right? It's a bank for the bankers. Yes. It's 12 banks. It's 12 banks for the bankers.
Yep.
The New York Fed is really kind of the top of the Fed. But there's, sometimes people like to characterize the Fed as a private institution, private, as a non-government thing that performs a public function. There's a way to think about it. You can frame it that way if you want to, but I think it's more useful to think of the Fed as part of the government, and I think it's more accurate to think of the Fed as part of the government. And looking back at history in terms of like when the Fed came about, before the Fed, there was the New York Clearinghouse Association, right? And it was all the big New York banks, and it was really J.P. Morgan was, he was the main guy, right? So it was essentially a private central bank. And the Panic of 1907 happened, and, all these rich bankers came in and backstopped the banking system. And then politicians were like, well, wait a minute, should we really have these rich bankers be the ones who are, who we're going to lean on in the time of a financial crisis, and who are managing the payment system and the banking system for us? And they said no. And obviously there was a lot of debate at the time about, kind of how things should be structured and how things should be worded and all of that. But what ended up coming out the other end was essentially a public version, in some ways, of the private New York Clearinghouse Association. So you had it was 12 central banks. They really, back then, they still believed that, we don't want power to be centralized in the United States, that kind of thing. More so than today, right? It's over the course of history, like originally, the 13 colonies were almost like different countries or something like that, but not so much anymore. And there's debate to be had about whether it could be more that way, less that way, that kind of thing. But all this is to say is that the Fed is part of the government. It was created by an act of Congress. The ownership structure is interesting, though, because it's owned by the private banks who are kind of members of the Fed. So if you look at the shares, like who holds the shares and that kind of thing. But it's not, the shares don't work the same way they do in, private corporations and like publicly traded corporations, that kind of thing. So yeah, structurally, you can view it as like a privately owned entity, or the individual banks are the Federal Reserve banks are privately owned entities. But really, like functionally, it's a part of the government. It was created through an act of Congress.
Now that's true. That's true, right? Like profits and stuff will go to a private entity, as you've said, though, right? And the other thing is, I guess it's
actually the profits of the Fed. If the Fed earns any profits, they go back to the Treasury.
Is that okay? I did not know that. But functionally, the important part of this, I think, is going to be where the oversight lies. And when you have an organization that's, forget the words public and private, that's more in direct oversight of government versus less, that's sort of like the issues we're talking about, the ability to politicize it. Like the Supreme Court is sort of waffling on the idea of even Trump has the right to fire people, like at the Fed, which to me, like talking about how much of a public institution it is, if Congress ain't voting on the people and the president ain't allowed to fire the people, it's hard to say like what functions more of a public institution, because it's like a public institution, the voters would have a right and the people we elect would have the right to have oversight, and we kind of don't, or at least in the key area, like who's in charge ultimately at the end of the day. Now, it may be, if you look at that court decision, they left room for ambiguity, and I ultimately suspect that the court will rule that Trump's able to, because it was sort of a technicality type thing. But yeah. So that's one thing. The other thing is, like, all of this is, like, I think I'm very much interested. I know you know what you're talking about. I'm interested in hearing you sort of talk about the history of how this came about. But that doesn't really get to the function of what I'm saying. Whether it be a private or public entity, the Fed, right, they clearly have been political. And depending on who you talk to, there are people that think that they're right now been political, which is why Trump's trying to fire people. Or you could say, well, Trump's being political, trying to control the Fed, which is why he's trying to fire people. So either side of it, you could quickly see.
They can both be true.
That's right. And so you could see that, like, this institution that you would create, I mean, now we've given, I mean, I'll ask you in a second exactly how much you would want, but given like some of the concerns I've already had that like it will be a political tendency to spend more, as we could see is the status quo, except this would be on steroids. There would be fraud that could be more rampant with direct money being sent out. There's other concerns that I have too that we can get to later if you want, such as when you're sending cash to people that are making poor decisions, sometimes that means they make even worse decisions. We can see this in California with the homeless population. So we could be talking about a crisis of drug overdoses, of people, DUIs, other sorts of unintended consequences of just sending cash to people that maybe aren't the best for it. I guess my question to start here would be, what amount, I'm not holding you to an exact dollar amount, but give me the theme. Are you talking about like $100 a month, $1,000 a month, something more than that? Like what would be your idea to send everyone? And would it be everyone or just like people that turn 18? Would it include non-citizens? Questions like that.
Yeah. So I'll start with the amount question, which is, my answer is that I advocate what's called a calibrated UBI.
Okay.
So the idea would be to start small and gradually increase the amount to figure out what actually allows the economy to operate as efficiently as possible, right? So right now you hear politicians talking about, we need to create jobs, bring the economy to full employment. Monetary policy is, the idea is that you kind of push money out to people to prop up demand and, create jobs and that kind of thing. As long as our politicians are talking that way or economists are talking that way, then the UBI is not high enough. There are actual like indicators that we can look at in the economy to tell, okay, now is probably a good time to stop raising the UBI. But it's complicated, and it's complicated right now when the Fed is setting interest rates, and it's not any less complicated if you're doing it with UBI, right? But it can get into
So two things I'll say real quick. One, I was just going to say that. We would say now, well, there's metrics that we could look at to decide whether to increase or lower interest rates. Yeah, and everyone disagrees. Right?
Exactly.
So it's like our Congress is so divided, our politics is so divided. And it's another point I was going to make. This is giving more monetary control to the government. We have people that are running that are legit communist. And so for me, this is a big fear that this helps open the door to being like, well, screw it. We should just own all the means of production. We already give UBI, right? And so for me, it's just another step in that direction anyways. But aside from that, let me just ask you, I totally get what you're saying. In an ideal system, we don't know the exact number. So start off low, increase gradually. Then we start to see warning signs, say, okay, let's pull back a little. That's the sweet spot. What does start off low look like, though? Like, just to get a general ballpark of like, you'd send $100 a month to everyone and then gradually increase it? Is that type of thing?
That's fine with me. I'm fine with $10 a month, right? I mean, like a big kind of step in the direction of getting this working is actually setting up the infrastructure, right? Having the system in place so that you can actually send the payments out. Like once you have that in place, then adjusting the amount is, it's a technical thing that's hard to get right, but you have the infrastructure there. You have the mechanisms in place that you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, to be, again, you're talking about one of the things, I don't know where you are politically, so we may completely be diametric. Like I'm more of a small government, but also a Trump fan, like populist. Maybe you fall in a different category, that's fine. But like one of the things that I think Trump's done well is shrinking the federal workforce. This sounds to me like this is going to be an agency that's far larger than the IRS. Like it's going to require to get these checks out and which way they're going to do it. And unless if you half-ass it, then the other problem is the fraud would be even worse. Because even with the IRS or with Medicare or Medicaid, fraud's staggering. There's all sorts of problems with efficiency. And now you're having people that are counting on part of their monthly income, this check coming, and I can see all sorts of problems. So I only bring it up here because when you're talking about building the infrastructure, it sounds to me like that might be a Herculean effort in its own right. We
exactly right. Problems. So we're talking about amounts, but we haven't even gotten the payment infrastructure in place yet.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's important to not minimize that. That's a tough thing to do. Yeah.
So for me, it's like as someone who's leaning more towards wanting less government offices and less government workers, to create something new like this seems like a huge undertaking that unless I'm sold on like, oh, this sounds great, it doesn't seem like me it would be worth the effort. It seems that we're creating another bureaucratic agency that I think would be rife with fraud, waste, and abuse. And for what? Well, because we see the current ones that are inefficient, and so we think that we'll just have the government. I'm not buying it. Not. Yeah, it's just a disagreement, obviously, but
it's interesting because when we talk about the size of the government, sometimes we're talking about, okay, how much is it interfering with the market or the economy or something like that, and then sometimes we're talking about what you're talking about right now, which is like, okay, the bureaucracy is huge, and there's all this potential for corruption and stuff like that. And sometimes we lump these two things together, but they're really kind of two different phenomena.
Yeah, for example, you could have a massive government with only one dictator. It's like, well, there's only one dude there, but he makes every decision. And we'd still say, well, that's huge government. They control everything. Or
and he's deciding to completely mess with all the prices and distort the markets and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you could have a far less government intervention, but just technically have more bureaucrats. So it's definitely true. Right. There are unique problems with both, but I would say both are a problem. And I would say fundamentally the intervention is the bigger problem. The reason, to me, the number of people involved in the government, it's a problem in that you're paying people for inefficient work, in my opinion, right? But that's less of a problem than what it represents is. And so an easy way, and I grant you it's not an apples to apples or 1-to-1, but an easy way to determine like the size of government is how much money for our employment is going to people in the public sector and how many people are employed in the public sector. But I think one of the big reason we say that is because we're like, look at how much influence, like this is a symbol of just how much power and intervention these agencies have into our market. So, yeah, but you're right. They're technically two different things. Like if all those people were working for free, would it still be a problem? Right? If they're all like, oh, none of us take a salary, like then it would be. So that's why I say it's not just the salary they're getting and how much money. It's significant of the power that they get to wield as intervening.
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
What do you think about the idea of inefficient jobs in the private sector, or even private sector make work?
Certainly, I think that the people that like worship at the altar of the marketplace, like private sector solves all, it's not that simple. There will always be inefficiencies, there'll be fraud, there'll be waste, even in a private sector. However, all of those are tamped way down because what happens is we as individuals vote with our feet and vote with our dollars. And so if we see something that's inefficient, we as the people will organically, without being forced through government intervention, decide that's not worth it anymore. So for example, if me and you both have a lawn care service, right? And it turns out that the town we live in, there's only 10 people. And it's like, this is grossly inefficient. There's 2 lawn care services here. Either one of these dudes could do all of the lawns in one day. Like, well, what is the purpose of this? The problem would solve itself. One of us would get hired or the other wouldn't. Or they would hire each of us half-time and then we would realize, well, we got to get another job because it's not working out. So for me, once the government starts to manage the money and makes choices, that's where waste, fraud, and abuse and the inefficiencies become so much more glaring. And that's because they don't have the same incentive that me and you have, where each of our financial decisions, we could see right in front of our own eyes how that's working out for us. They don't care about that. It's sort of the theory I did like this. Like when I was growing up, I living with my parents. I remember my parents flipping out if I would open like a can of soda and drink half of it and leave it on the counter. And they'd be like, what are you doing? And I was like, it got warm. And they'd be like, you know how much money that costs? And I didn't. I mean, I vaguely did, but I didn't give a shit. But as soon as you move out on your own, you're like, oh yeah, that waste sucks. Like it sucks because that's my dollars now. When it was someone else's dollars, I don't give a shit about waste. And the other thing is the government's incapable of making it's so difficult in a country of roughly 350 million people for the government to be able to move these chess pieces and know where to make the correct decisions. It's just so difficult. And they're having problems doing it now. So if we relied on them to find these metrics to determine exactly how much money, you could already see what would happen. Like you would see the Democrats running on, we need to triple the amount of UBI payments. And then you would have like the Rand Paul, Thomas Massey people like, no, they need to be massively cut or taken down to zero. And they're all looking at the same data, right? And so it's like the side that's going to win out because of the political incentive is going to be spend more. That's how we're in this position now, where it's like our debt goes out of control because there is no immediate incentive for you to be like, whoa, we gotta tighten our belt. If a candidate runs, like Ron Paul tried this, he basically said without saying it, like, yeah, we're fucked for like 2 to 4 years. We're gonna have to tighten our belt. We just have to. If you at your home if you make $10,000 a month and you spend $15,000 and you do that 6 months in a row, now you're in that would be $30,000 debt. The way out of that debt is you either have to make more to pay it back or you have to spend less than what you're making and use the rest to pay off the debt. No one wants to hear that message, Joe. And so, we have through sort of our economics, modern monetary theory, it's like, no, we could just perpetually. What's to stop that same sort of theory to say, send more money? Why 1,000? Why not 2,000? Why not 10,000? Spur the economy. Who gives a shit? And ultimately what you're doing is then you're incentivizing people with inefficient or bad behavior. And in the meantime, anytime the government gets involved, there's going to be a certain percentage of waste, fraud, and abuse. So I think that would you say this is fair? That we could expect 10% waste, fraud, and abuse through this program?
I think that's not what I think about.
Yes. Okay.
And
I'll look it up.
But let me tell you a little bit about why I don't think about it.
Okay.
And it's because your position is that we'd be adding more bureaucracy, and I'm not convinced about that, right? Because what are you doing instead? Well, you're doing it instead of pushing money into the economy through monetary policy, right? The Fed pushing money out there and distorting the financial markets and distorting the labor markets. So you're no longer allocating capital and labor efficiently, right? So, when I brought up, okay, there's big government in terms of like a lot of bureaucracy, and big government in terms of like how much they're trying to like influence things and how bad they're messing things up and that kind of thing. The way we're doing it right now through the Fed, inducing the private sector to print money by creating unnecessary jobs and unnecessary investments, this is a massive waste. And maybe it's, are you arguing this is the best we can do? I mean, you're kind of anti-Fed, so
right.
Maybe you're saying that we shouldn't be doing that either. We shouldn't be doing that, and we shouldn't be doing UBI. But then the question is, where does the economy's money come from, right? Like, we can't not have a source of money for the economy. So what do you do?
Well, I think that we could see that there are significant changes that we could make to the federal policy, like the Federal Reserve. I personally think that auditing the Fed, having more control over them, and like sort of, I would be in favor of passing like laws, balanced budget laws, etc., things like this that would make it less incentive to spend this amount of money. And without that government spending, I think even without radically changing Fed policy, we'd be less likely to see them have an incentive to have to manage the amount of money in existence as much. So in other words, it would be less that they would have to manage. But I think that tweaks in that system, or possibly, I don't think that we're anywhere near going back to like an actual like standard, like a gold standard or something like that. I don't think we're near that, so it's pie in the sky to talk about it. But I think that ultimately, if we have to accept a fiat currency, that we should limit as much as possible the ability to have government be sort of intervening on that. We should instead have like some sort of predictable measures that we're using with less power in the hands of less centralized people to manage what those rates are. I don't have the answer to that specifically. What I will say though is I don't think that your plan just adds to it. Your plan's like the cake is rotten, so let's put another layer of cake on top of it. But it doesn't solve because in effect, if let's say hypothetically, I say this, that they put you in charge of this and you're like a nonpartisan person, I'll just accept like to the best of your ability, you're nonpartisan and you're looking at the data and you're like, I'm got my earmuffs on, I'm not listening to anyone, I'm just trying to do, and let's say you're doing it very well, that still doesn't affect what the Fed decides. The Fed may disagree with you and say, we're going to raise interest rates. We're going to lower interest rates. And then we're in the exact same problem we are now. Now that puts you on the back foot. Now you're like, well, shit. They lowered interest rates. Now I have to make adjustments because the metrics I'm using to decide how much money to send each person each day or each month now changes because the Fed's policy of contracting or increasing the money supply, they're still going to have the same ability. Banks will still have the same ability, right? And so, again, to me, the experiment, it's not apples to apples, but it is the government experiment in sending people money was COVID. And what happened? We doubled the supply of M2 money supply. We saw hundreds of billions of dollars go out the window in fraud. Like, it didn't lead to long-lasting, secure infrastructure, where we're all better off because of this. It was the exact opposite. Now we're going to suffer the financial ramifications for that for the next decade. To me, that is at least in part going to the direction you want. And I think all the same problems we saw with the stimulus, with the PPP, we're going to see here. And that's, again, without even looking at intentional corruption, intentional manipulation for politics, and the other part of it, which would be people mismanaging those funds and like the problems that we would have with that, which we didn't talk about yet. But
yeah, well, you said a lot of things that I have opinions on. But what I'm going to say is probably something you're not expecting, which is that I don't like the term fiat money. I don't think there's such a thing as fiat money. I don't think the government has the power to decide what's money and what's not. I don't think that's I think in order for the government's money to be used as money, the government has to manage their money and implement their money in a way that the market will choose to use it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but, right, I guess the term fiat money give me a second to put this into words. It is a semantical argument. I think when most people say fiat money, what they're implying is that there's not some standard behind it. Like, so look, this might sound, I think your knowledge of I don't know if you went to school for economics or something, but your knowledge of economics, like the history and of everything, I think is clearly higher than mine. And maybe mine, not because I'm smart or anything, just because I've talked about this stuff, but higher than the normal person. So just to explain to the audience, like the concept of fiat currency, right? the idea of like before the Federal Reserve, et cetera, we had like a gold standard. And one of the big debates in our country, oh shit, I forget what year it was, but I remember because I was speech and debate guy. So there's this famous speech by candidate William Jennings Bryan, right?
Yeah.
And he gave it's called the Cross of Gold speech, right?
Yeah, I'm
And when
familiar,
he was arguing against the gold standard and wanted to shift it to a silver standard because he thought that private banks were sort of buying up all this gold and then using it to contract or inflate the money supply. And so they're making all this money by having, and so he's like, you will not crucify me on this cross of gold. He gives this famous speech. Federal Reserve comes along, we could talk about which it was. I don't think it's necessary for this. But in this sense,
this was pre-Fed by about
yes, William Jennings
a little over a decade. Yeah.
Yes. Federal Reserve comes in and that takes us off like the gold standard. Now, it used to
it didn't quite happen like that. Federal Reserve came along at the same time World War I came along.
Yes.
And then the United States ended up with all the world's gold and everyone else went off the gold standard except for us. And they tried to get back on in the 1920s. Great Depression happened. World War II happened. A lot of things happened. But yes, now we're not on the gold standard.
Right. So the fiat money just means that we don't, it's basically money based on the faith of, the government being able to back it up. Right. That's in juxtaposition to a standard, whether it be a gold standard. I don't know other standards that have been used in history. I mean, precious metal, that's about all I can think of.
It's usually gold standard, silver standard, or bimetallic. In ancient Rome, they had copper coins. In, China in the 900 AD range, they actually had paper, but it wasn't quite the kind of money that we have now. And yeah, there's been various standards. And I wouldn't say we're not on a standard right now. In fact, what I would say instead of fiat money is I would say that we are on a pure credit standard, right? So we're actually on a dollar standard. And there are some people who say that even in the gold standard world of, say, the late 1800s, right, the international gold standard, they would say that it wasn't really a gold standard. Like the pound sterling was pegged to gold, but everyone was really on a sterling standard, right? When you were trading internationally, for the most part, weren't sending gold back and forth. You were sending bills of exchange, which are kind of like checks that are drawn on banks in London, in the city of London, right? So there's some people who say that gold was even back then kind of playing a secondary role.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. I don't know that, but I actually buy that. That intuitively makes sense. Point I'm trying to make is I don't think it's as simple as what you're saying that we're not in a fiat because we're on this like credit or it's like it's backed by sort of the markets, because the problem with that is, right, that it's fluctuating. It's ever fluctuating in a way that a stable metal or something like that wouldn't be. And ultimately, credit itself is an act of based on faith. Like if I give you credit, what's backing that? My faith that you'll pay me back. So if you're like, well, the system is credit, ultimately, then it's not a backing necessarily. It is faith that the payment will come, which is sort of, I think, what a lot of people's criticism is with the fiat currency, that if that's the case, if there's if there's no, formerly, hypothetically, if I said all the Golden Fork Knox is worth $1 trillion, and therefore we can't print any more unless we get more gold. 1 trillion is what it is. And all your dollar denotes is a percentage of that gold that's there. That's it, right? And theoretically, you could redeem for a percentage of that gold if you wanted, right? There's some amount of stability to that. Whereas if we say, nah, that's gone, we're just operating on the faith and credit of the most powerful economy in the world, the United States. And so the dollar will be the standard. Well, what's the standard for the dollar? Faith and credit in the United States. That's the standard. We assume that they will pay their debt, right? And so if the United States says, we're going to send you $5 billion, the assumption is there's some sort of value in that because of faith in the system itself. Or do you disagree? It looks like you did. Go ahead, I'll leave you.
I kind of agree and kind of disagree. The first thing I want to point out is that the price of gold bounces around in the market. Just because you're fixed to gold doesn't mean that the price of gold is this anchor that is not moving or something like that.
That's true, but it's more stable. Would be what
I'm saying. It depends. It depends on when and where you're talking about, right? There have been times when there are like huge gold discoveries, right? And then like the price of gold goes plummeting, and there were times like we were just talking about everyone going off the gold standard and back on again. Well, guess what happens to the price of gold when everyone goes off the gold standard and you don't need it for your monetary system anymore? It goes way down. And guess what happens to the price of gold when everyone gets back on the gold standard? It goes way up again.
But that's true. But all of those are physical things that we can tell. We found gold, or a ship went down with a bunch of gold in it, hypothetically. Those are physical. Like, what's to stop the United States in a 4-year period from being like, you know what, we double the money supply. We double the amount of dollars.
Yeah. So you're asking an important question. And I think a more general way of asking this question is, should we expect the government to provide monetary stability better than kind of the market price of gold would provide monetary stability, right? And I think a lot of people would argue today, they would say, well, the governments have kind of been doing that, and that's why we're not on a gold standard anymore, right? Because gold was actually not stable enough, or we've achieved more stability without gold. And just to add another wrinkle to that, even when we were on a gold standard, eventually it got to the point where the governments were not just pegging their money to gold, they were also managing the price of gold and stabilizing the price of gold. So if you're stabilizing the price of gold anyway, it can be maybe easier to stabilize the price of your money if it doesn't also have to be kind of connected to this single commodity, right? Yeah.
Look, I think that you're correct that there any backing of any currency, there could be problems. You're never going to have it be 100% predictable or stable. Totally true. But I think the idea of like the system we have now being more stable, I mean, I guess it depends on who you ask, right? There's certainly, and we could see this, right? Like, this is one of the dangers. This is getting into a political discussion, maybe different than this, but like, it's one of the dangers with the United States, like messing around with like sanctions and stuff, or like, we're not going to pay you this debt we owe because you're from Russia and fuck you, right? At some point, the rest of the world might say, well, we don't have faith in this currency anymore, because if the United States could just be like, nope, or they could be like, you know what, we doubled the amount. And when you print money, and that's a bad word because we're not literally printing it, but I guess when you create,
I know what you mean. I understand the metaphor.
Yeah. The people that get it first benefit the most, right? And so, like, if you're a different country and you're on the dollar as the reserve currency, you might not be happy with that deal. So
yeah, that's called the Cantillon effect.
Yeah, I think that largely people accepted that. I mean, oh my gosh, I'm no expert in this shit, so I don't want to be bullshitting, but my understanding is a lot of the reason that this came about in the world, because there's a good argument, like, why would the rest of the world accept this? Well, there's good arguments financially, but a big one is like the Bretton Woods Agreement, where basically the United States after World War II was like, here's the deal, we'll become like the world police, right? We'll defend the Western world, and what we get out of it is you use our dollar as the reserve currency, right? And this is sort of JD Vance and like a lot of the people he follows. This is sort of, he gave this famous speech in like 2022 where his argument's like, okay, we don't export cars. We don't export like manufacturing anymore. We export dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. How's that help the middle class in the United States? What's that do for the auto manufacturers in Detroit? Your dad worked for GM in Detroit, and now you can't afford a house. What happened? We keep building up these financial institutions. They're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. More people are going into the financial market in the United States. We're creating less and less things. And right now it's working because we're exporting dollars and the world accepts it. But at some point, the world might say, you know what? We're going to form BRICS. We're going to do something different. And then what happens to the United States? Now we're looked at a manufacturing base that's been depleted. We rely on all of these other countries like China for basic necessities, like, during the pandemic, PPP, or, textiles, etc., even ammunition. And so JD Vance is like, we need to prepare for a world where the US dollar is not as powerful as it is as the reserve currency. This is something that I agree with, but it's sort of getting into I actually very much enjoy the conversation. A little bit getting into the weeds. I'll leave you respond to it, but nonetheless, I will concede that we're not getting onto a gold standard or silver standard and say there'd be significant problems if we do. Even still, in the current system, whether we call it fiat currency or not, I still think that you're adding problems onto a problem that exists instead of shrinking the problem.
Are you familiar with the term Dutch disease or resource curse? Either of those terms?
Resource curse, yes. Dutch disease, I'm unfamiliar with.
It's kind of similar.
Same thing?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the idea is, I guess the Dutch, they found all of these, kind of oil reserves, off their coast, and then they started exporting all this oil and making all this money, and then it became unprofitable for them to produce anything else, and then they kind of become a single, kind of commodity exporter, and they have to, depend on the rest of the world market in order to get the rest of their stuff. There are people who argue that that's, and this is, I think, kind of what you were saying, that the United States is kind of like that, except, I mean, we're also exporters of oil, but we are exporters of the dollar, right? And then it becomes unprofitable for us to, export actual stuff, right? Because we make the most money, we make the most profit by really focusing on, exporting the dollar, banking, finance, that kind of stuff. It's just an interesting, well, it's not just an, but it is interesting. And, how do you deal with that? I don't know. Anyway, we're getting a little bit away.
Yeah, I know we've been going for an hour, so I'm going to wrap it up somewhat here. But I want to give you two questions. I want to, one, obviously give you the opportunity to make your final case unfettered without me interrupting for the audience. And then the second question I have is, what do you think the likelihood is of us going in that direction of UBI?
So I'll answer that question with, I think the likelihood is not very high unless I do something about it. So I'm with a nonprofit think tank. We're called the Gresham Institute, and we study the macroeconomics and monetary economics of UBI. And I think, most economists you talk to are not going to talk about UBI the way I do.
Can you spell out the organization, the name of Gresham?
Oh yeah, I should spell it out because the spelling is wrong. It's spelled wrong. So it's Gresham, GRESHM.org. There's no A.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But it's named after Sir Thomas Gresham, who was a 16th century British financier who did have an A in his name. And he came up with it, and he didn't come up with it, but it's named after him. This principle that the overvalued money drives the undervalued money out of circulation. The bad money drives out the good, right? So if you're in a bimetallic standard, it's impossible to have just a mix of gold and silver coins out there. Everyone's gonna, hoard the coin that's worth more and spend the coin that's worth less, and the one they spend is actually going to become the money. So it's our institute is named after that law. But GRESHAM.org was taken. So we took out the A.
Well, I'm glad I found it. I'll link so people could check it out if they want. But I just wondered, because I could see myself struggling later. Like, what's this Gresham College? What is this? Doesn't sound like what this dude's
right, exactly. Is it Gresham Orion or
Yeah. But
Gresham College is named after the same guy. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
But fair enough. So you think that it will require people like you that are trying to inform both sides, look, this is the way to go. And it's interesting because I will say this. I think that you're advocating for this in a way that's quite different than what someone like Yang or some of these people that have really pushed this. And so always when you're pushing for something, you want to be able to talk to people in ways of that fits into their core values. Yang doesn't speak to almost anyone that's conservative with that, right? Where it's just So I do think it's interesting. But go ahead. We'll give you your final pitch here. And just so you know, I very much enjoyed the conversation. So.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. I've enjoyed the conversation too. I guess the only thing I'll really say for the final pitch is that the way we get people their money is broken, right? We're pushing money to people through the labor market, and our society and our economy is structured so that people have to get their money through jobs. And when you're structuring your economy that way, then it causes you to create jobs we don't need, right? So there's a lot of extra inefficient work that's being done in the economy just in the name of handing people money. And it doesn't look like it from the perspective of the employers, but really the employers are responding to market conditions, and the government is influencing market conditions to generate jobs. And this is a really inefficient thing to do. And the government can just hand people their money instead. And so I like to say that the way we get people their money is broken. People need money, not jobs, right? You could argue that people need jobs in certain ways psychologically, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. There's
really,
an argument, but yeah.
But really, people need money, and the easiest way to get them their money, is to hand it to them directly, rather than hiding the handouts behind the market, right, and distorting the market away from efficient allocation of resources. So, if the way we get people their money is broken, then it breaks a lot of other things, right? Like, why are we afraid of AI taking all the jobs? Because people need jobs. Well, no, they don't need jobs. They need the money, right? So sometimes you hear about UBI, oh, it's the solution to this AI crisis. It's like, well, no, there's something wrong with our economy if we're afraid of eliminating unnecessary work. Like, why isn't eliminating work something that makes us all better off? Why doesn't it free us from toil? And it's because we're tying people's source of money to employment. So we're afraid of losing the jobs, which is completely backwards. If you think about like, oh, you know, it would be great. You know, people would love to have more free time to spend doing whatever they want, including more important work, right? Maybe it's work that the market wouldn't pay for, but it's actually useful to, you know, their family or something like that. You know, so when the way we get people their money is broken, a lot of other things break. And the way to make it not broken, I would say, is universal basic income. Hand everybody the same amount of money on an ongoing basis and calibrate that amount to what's optimal for the economy, so we don't have to push money to people in these other broken ways. And what amount is that? Well, it's, I don't know. We have to discover it. And then it's also going to change over time. As the economy becomes more productive, more efficient, right? Then maybe the amount of the UBI increases over time. You know, I would expect it to. Or maybe we're environmentalists and we want to conserve resources. Well, then maybe we put some taxes in on carbon. I mean, I don't know if you're in favor of that or not. But, you know, we can decide, right? We can decide we want to use fewer resources. We want to conserve more. We want to be more sustainable. So we do that through taxes. And then that pushes the rate of UBI down, the rate that it calibrates to, right? So you kind of, you know, it's not a problem if the economy stays the same size, right? We want people to be better off over time. So maybe we like it to grow and we like people to be better off in that way, but we don't need to grow it just to kind of keep it going, right? There's this idea, you know, this sense now, both in economic models and in politics and the public, that, you know, the economy needs to keep growing or we're all screwed or something like that. No, I mean, it should, that's another problem. It shouldn't be that way. And the way we get people their money is broken. So that's it.
Well, I think I would quibble with some of the things you said there, but what I like about what you're doing is I think you're addressing the problem in a different way. And I also think that it's conversations, even if not in the way you're suggesting, this conversation is going to become more and more frequent. It just is. And we can see that there are a lot of people that are getting on this. Like Yang was just the start of what I think is people that are going to, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if Yang seemed very likable, but very unsophisticated, right? Like when people started asking questions, I thought that like, it'd be like me talking to people at the bar, like, yeah, they should do just hire Tom Brady. Yeah, fuck it. And it's like, sure, that sounds good, but how would that work given the salary cap? And he's like, sounds and so I think that people talking about it in a more nuanced way is going to be inevitable. So I do appreciate you coming on. I'll add one or two quick questions before you go. One, is there a channel you would want to promote where people could watch or just go to the website? And second, would you be interested in, like, I know some dudes at like Modern Day Debate and other places, would you be interested in setting up a formal debate with someone that maybe it was on the other side of this issue?
Yeah, I'd be happy to set something up like that. People, you can check out the Gresham.org website, and there's a little link down there to our Discord, which I know is a very dangerous thing to do, that we have a public link to our Discord server.
Right.
But so far, it hasn't been too bad. So if you want to come in and talk to us, we're on there. We meet in voice chat every Tuesday. So today at 4 p.m. Eastern time. But it's not. We'll talk at other times also, but that's kind of our regularly scheduled thing.
Well, if I hear anything from any of those dudes that set up debates, I'll let you know. But I think you would at least be entertaining, because a lot of times, like a lot of these discussions just end up online just screaming at each other. So I think you're certainly capable of advocating your idea without that. So, but hey, I thank you so much for coming on. It made my show much better today. I was sick and didn't know what to talk about. So
yeah, thanks for having me. I hope you feel better. And yeah, if you want to reach out to me, you can email me. It's just my first name at gresham.org. Which anyone can figure out if they want to think about it. So hopefully we'll talk again.
All right, man. Hey, you take it easy. Thanks so much for calling in.
Yep. Thanks, Rob.
Yep. Very nice guy. And I did very much enjoy the conversation, and certainly has a better understanding of the history of monetary policy than me. I still disagree for many of the reasons I said there. I think that it would be I think it's a stepping stone to what big government socialists would want. I think that it's going to create more bureaucracy and more government intervention that would be fraudulent and inefficient. There's some interesting things there. We could probably talk another hour or two on the conversation of, do people need jobs or money? Easily, they need money more than jobs. Like, you need to be able to afford food. But there's also something to be said, and I think it gets to the point of the problems we've seen in places like California. There's something like, I don't know, I want to sound too goofy here, but something spiritual about doing some sort of work that has benefit, that gives meaning. You can see this in all sorts of ways. For example, you see anecdotally people say all the time, when a lot of older guys retire, within a year or two, they end up passing away. But if they just keep working, they live longer. It's like there's something meaningful about work that's important. And we see this with like some of the homeless population I was talking about. When you just give people money and they don't appreciate like the sacrifice that went into earning it, oftentimes other negative things could come. So, don't bring him back on. I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was a fine conversation. And I think there are people even in my audience that will agree with some of this, which is fine. I don't. My impression of the gentleman was, I don't think it's coming from a place of malice. It's someone that's coming from, he wants people to succeed and just has a different idea of how to get there than me. But I enjoyed the conversation very much. So I hope you did as well. Much different than many of the callers I get. And also another thing, I think that when it's a decent conversation like that, one of the reputations I get is like, well, you talk over people when you yell. I don't think so. I do when it's someone coming in and it's saying stuff like, oh, we need to use violence against the government. That's one thing. I think that I wanted to make sure that I allowed it. And I'm glad I did, because I thought that he was advocating in a way that I had heard one time someone make an argument similar to his, where it's like, it's not about providing basic needs for people. It's about the flow of money, right? And so it's like, if I stand up and say, yeah, but if you just send Dave over here $1,000 instead of giving him food stamps, he won't use that $1,000 on food. He'll use it, instead of on healthcare and food, he'll use it on booze. And then he'll say, okay, now I showed up to the hospital, give me free healthcare. And then we're in the exact same position we're in. Do we say, no, we already sent you money? No one's going to have the will to do that. But he's not making that argument. He's saying, no, we would keep those systems. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed it. I did. I have a fat body with tiny, skinny legs. I think my legs are kind of fat, too. I don't know. Is that true? What have you been doing, sir? Are you a guy? Oh, you're a weird avatar. You checking out my legs? What's up with that? I'm married. Find your own guy. Leave me out of it. Is that my new role? Am I just eye candy for the online audience now? Yeah, my legs are rarely shown on fucking screen. What are you guys? No, I'm not showing it. Oh, now we know. Uh-huh. Oh, boy, we know where this goes.
He harasses women in messages, has a weird infatuation with men's organs. He's a syndicated radio host, and it's all about respect. He's Brian Shaprio.
You can't fool us, man. You can't fool us. Go away. Go away. You like my hat? Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Let's check the super chats. Had a conversation with a guy, thought it was a civil conversation, enjoyed it very much. We got 2 super chats. It's Jacob Official, $10, says, long-winded and yet no argument. I mean, he had an argument, but I see what your point is. I think it's utopian. I really do. I think this idea of, we'll just put the best man. You can see the same sort of people making the same argument for every government program that's ever been an abject disaster. No, Medicare. Look, here's what we'll do. We'll put people that'll know exactly how much to spend, right? Kyle Swim the Now, $5, says, get back to work. I am. And Dan Vicious says he's making an argument for fiat currency for $1 over on Rumble. That is part of what he was doing. Joseph Romano, $10. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, there's a question like, do you disincentivize work by sending people money? And he says that we'll narrowly tailor it. Like, well, my guess is I'll try to answer this. It's like, because what Umber Project's saying here is like, well, what will you have to buy if people stop creating things because you're just sending people money? They won't have an incentive to work anymore. That's sort of what we've done with unemployment and all these other benefits. No one wants to go out and pick the fruit because you could have a living just sitting on your ass. Then we have to bring in cheap labor from the third world to pick the fruit because no one wants to pick the fruit because you could afford to live a life not working because of the benefits that we give. So if we're giving everyone money and that money would be sufficient in order to live, well, then who's creating the shit? It's a fair point. I believe his answer would be this. No, but we'll reevaluate like every month how much dollars we're sending. So we'll send enough dollars out that it's not enough to live on. To which my counter argument to that would be like, yeah, there's no way the government's that efficient. They're just not. You know, in my opinion. Jay Barty says it's 2026. People do not need to create the thing. Yeah, they do. How many musicians made my whip song? How many people made my computer? How many people created the assets that did that? Go ahead, though, Jay Barty. Try this experiment. For the next month of your life, live entirely off things that there was no human hand in the creation or delivery of. Go ahead. And also let us know where your funeral will be. There's an overstatement on how much technology has made labor unnecessary. That's just not true. It's just not. Limited human interaction. What did you eat today? Did a machine create it? Who cares if we don't have armies? There are people in agriculture. Anyways. Anyways, the point I was going to make, I thought it was a good conversation. And I got like 4 donations. But if I say right now, hey, we're going to do whip songs, I'll probably get more donations. Above all else, by the way, that gentleman's name, I didn't. So here's something that happens. I'm using StreamYard. So here, I'll show you. To the shaky cam. Do I have the shaky cam set up? Yes, there it is. Shaky cam. All right. So this is what I see. Hopefully my camera goes. You see my screen? See down here? So I can see like there's Avarice, he's in the back. And then if I invite someone, that'll be there. So it'll say their name. So I can't pull it any. Well, maybe I can. There we go. All right. So you see it says robnoerr. That's me. There's Avarice. And so let's say you would join. I would send you an invite and you would join. It'll ask you to put your name in. So let's say, for example, let's just pick on someone in the chat. Wade Boggs. All right, let's say Wade Boggs calls in, but when StreamYard, when he's signing in to StreamYard to call in, it says, what's your name? And he writes, my name's Jim Smith. It's going to pop up as Jim Smith. So a lot of times people screw up and they'll be using a pseudonym on the chat, but then when they call in, it's their real name. So that guy was like, it was like Sun Chose or something like that was his name. And when he calls in, his name was Alex Howlett. And I didn't want to say, hey, thanks for calling in, Alex. And have him be like, oh, shit, no, you've accidentally doxed my name. But as a dude who's the head of a 501c3, I think it's clear he's a public person. But I always worry about that. And it's the same with people that will, like, donate money on, like, PayPal. Because, like, Wade Boggs' PayPal account might be his real name. So if he says, hey, check your PayPal, I sent you some money, I might be like, oh, Jim Smith, thanks for the $15. And Wade might be like, no, don't say that. So I always try to err on the side of safety to keep using people's pseudonyms because I don't want to accidentally. The best example of this is, and I'll send a shout out. I wonder, dude, I haven't talked to this guy, a friend of mine. I got to reach out to him. His name's Drone Tech Politics. Let me see if he's still putting out videos. He's great, man. He got screwed over so bad. Drone Tech was making a great living off of YouTube. circa 2016. He's one of these guys that was in early on it, and he got screwed over because all the censorship, the demonetization. This sucks, man. It looks like he hasn't been doing videos for 4 months. It's terrible. But he really got screwed over by the algorithm. Well, I know Drone Tech's real name. and I would always be like, don't use your real name in private conversations because then I'll slip up and I'll say it, So it's like, let's just call you Drone Tech, I don't want to know Avarice's real name. I don't want to know Mr. E's real name. I don't want to know Jake Rattlesnake's real name. His real name is actually Rattlesnake. Because I'll slip up. I'll slip up and say it on stream. And I don't want to do that. So
my real name is...
See? Shut down! That's... okay, so the great Daniel Graves. What's up, man? $20 says, another argument could be only enough money to support yourself, but then you need to work for all the additives of like wanting a new boat or something. But don't take this as me advocating for this. No, that's... Again, I'll try to argue as if I was him. He would say, yes, that's sort of intuitive to what he's saying, but he's also, his suggestion isn't, this is for your basic needs. He's saying there's something entirely different that he's focused on, which is money circulating in order to create jobs is something that's not necessary. So I would say intuitively, if you boil down to it, he would say, yeah, that's what I'm saying. He doesn't want to disincentivize work. So in effect, he would give you a minimal amount that would be the sweet spot that would no longer be necessary for banks, etc., to provide the loans to create work in the ways that he's saying are problematic, but at the same time would still mean that you would have an incentive to go out and get work, would be his argument. He'd probably make it more sophisticated than that, but Truth Revolt, $5 says, Rob's got chicken legs. That's why is it blacks? Is that why the blacks love him? Do they? Imagine if everyone had $1,000 a month, period, no strings. Many people would be able to make rent every month or be able to fix their car. And rent would just go up $1,000 a month. And then that person would say, you know what? I'm going to go out partying with my friends. Rent could wait. And then what would you say? Well, if we only gave them $2,000, then they could afford rent. Now, it's not a direct one-to-one thing, but it's like this. Wow, man, people that get college degrees make more money. If only we could have everyone getting a college degree. Okay, now college degrees are next to worthless. So now it's like, well, in order to distinguish yourself, you need a master's degree. Okay, if we make those worth it, well, now you need a doctorate. So if we inflate the currency to basically mean that because we printed so much money that we're sending everyone $1,000 a month, all you've done is just mean, okay, rent goes up. Now it's not 1,000, it's more. And you're still relying on people to spend that money prudently. Here's the truth. This is what people don't want to talk about. And I could lump myself in this as most of my life being someone that's, I don't know if you'd say upper, lower class or lower middle class. Somewhere in there. Like I'm paying the bills, but I don't have much set aside. That's what I've been most of my life. Right? The truth of the matter is, and this includes myself and many people I know, it's our own fault in a lot of cases. Not every case. And there's a lot of shit set up. You work in a coal mine your whole life, the coal mine closes. Okay, yeah, those are circumstances out of your control. But a lot of it is poor decision making. I'll tell you a story about someone I really care about. I knew a family. This was a father and a wife. And they had young children who did not have health insurance and lamented it. And you felt terrible. Kid gets sick. What do we do? Now, there's government programs to help the kids, but not the parents. That's terrible. And they're hard workers. They both had jobs. They didn't pay much, but they had jobs. But they did not have health insurance. They couldn't afford it. But they had season tickets to the Steelers. They had the new PlayStation, an Xbox. They had a nice PC. They had a four-wheeler. But they couldn't afford health insurance. Now, what do we do there? And when it came time where it was like, holy shit, I can't afford to go to a doctor, it's like, yeah? What do we do with that? Well, health insurance is a human right. Is it? If I don't have clean water and I have money, I'll guarantee in short order I use that money to get water to drink. If I can't eat, I guarantee I'll start starving and use that money to get food. But will I use it to get health insurance? Or will I buy season tickets and buy a new PlayStation? Yeah, season tickets are a lot. And this, by the way, was like 2007. So insurance was way less. It's pre-Obamacare. You know? Now, there's a middle ground. I'm not one of these dudes that are like, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, blah, 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 in all circumstances. You shouldn't have to live a morose life where you can do nothing of entertainment just to meet your bare necessities. I think that that's shit. But at the same time, a lot of people, myself included, that have complained about finances in the past, did an awful lot of excess spending on stupid, frivolous shit. Yeah, Umber Project's right. I think what's happening is technology is actually like, I'll tell you a story. When I was in college, started in 2002, and all of my meanderings around there, I was hanging out with largely three groups. One, my redneck group from back home, which I only went to college like 10 minutes away from where I grew up. So I still hung out with a lot of those dudes that are probably right-wing. Most of them didn't go to college. They went out, got a job, etc. Then I was hanging out with a lot of people in the art department. I happen to have a couple good friends that went to that university in the art department. And so they weren't like super political, but they're lefty-ish type people. And then the third group I hung around with was the debate people, who overwhelmingly were radically left. Right? So those were the three groups of people I hung out with. And I remember, like, all these lefty people I was hanging out with, they used to be like, technology is going to take out, like, all these blue-collar jobs. You're going to get replaced. Machinery is going to replace the agriculture. It's going to replace the welder. It's going to replace the... And to some extent, it did. But the irony is, a lot of those people in the debate community and in the art community, turns out technology's coming for their jobs way faster. And they thought it was funny. Green energy. Tell your buddy that works in the fracking industry. Looks like he's fucked. Well, guess what? My fracking buddy still has a job, doing quite well. My artist buddy? And so, it's very funny the predictions that people had. You know, a lot of these people, you know, for example, the Hollywood type entertainers, they'd laugh at us blue collar people. So what? Industry's leaving. That's just the way the economy works. Industry's leaving. It's like, all right, motherfucker. I guess we don't need you all for entertainment anymore either. We'll just make our music with AI. They're like, that's ridiculous. No. It's hard to feel bad. Yeah, learn to code, right? It's hard to feel bad. And there's an irony in some of the shit. Like, for example, nurses will be needed. You need a human touch, someone to be there. But doctors, a lot of doctors will be replaceable through technology where you could have less doctors because doctors could do things remotely. Or you could just, a doctor's basically just inputting data and giving you out the response. And it's like, but wait a minute, the doctor's far more impressive than a nurse. You had to go to school for, yeah, but... So it's like, you know, a lot of my friends are high in the hog right now that are shit like welders, carpenters, working on road crews. They ain't getting replaced anytime soon. Plumbers, they ain't getting replaced. It's a lot of these industries that they thought they were untouchable. We're artistic. We won't get replaced. Okay. Now the shoe's on the other foot. Now it's not so funny. Now, I still think that it's worth looking into, like, well, what can we do with all of this? Yeah, mechanics, of course. But I've talked about it before in here. All right. Look, here's the deal. I've got an hour and 40 minutes. I know this show was different than most. I do apologize. I am going to go to the bathroom real quick, and I'm going to get a drink. I could feel that I need a drink. So I will be right back, and then we'll do whip songs, and we'll end the show. But I have to go to the bathroom here. I'll be right back.
Rob, be out. So let's get an oldie but goodie.
Robnoerr Show. It's not the Noah Rob Show. This is my favorite show.
Oh, Rob is gone.
Because
This is the time to get those donuts again.
If this
Like
was
the
your
portable.
show, you'd probably like it more. But maybe that's just because it was your show. But it's not your show. It's the Robnoerr Show.
You can also use Cash App. And he's coming around. There we go.
I'm back.
And the guys.
Big Daddy Bud says, I'm not doing Eminem. My name is Big Daddy. No, it's Dane Snyder, and better not nobody come see me in Mobile, Alabama, because I can't feed you. All right. Fair. Jackie, $5 is for the Chair and Avarice show. When does that air? And then we got Mangozi, $10 says, good to see you, Colonel. Chair, sir. Oh, boy. Improving Shooter. What's up, my man? $20 is off topic. Who's up for a bet on how many printed frame screenshots Brian Shapiro has hung of him on CNN, Piers Morgan, etc.? Syndicated radio host, my friend. Syndicated. 100 million people a day listen to him. Yeah, I'm with you there, Cosmic. Not only financially, but also psychologically, spiritually. Mike Rowe had a whole show based on this concept. The happiest people in the world are blue-collar workers, man. You're doing work that matters every day. Bullshit, Mr. Alley Cat. He says, I'm not leaving a doctor give you my colonoscopy remotely. Yeah, right. You're probably volunteering. All right. So, to no one's surprise, seeing as how we only have $94, I owe 0 whip songs tonight. Hey! So we'll stick around for a couple minutes. We're only $6 away. I remind you, a $100 donation will spin the whip wheel. $150, you can pick a specific song. $200, you can create a song of your choosing. And if we collectively get over a $100 mark from this point on, every time we get over that spins the wheel. So at this point, $5.05 on YouTube would be a whip song. Wish I had some mouthwash up here. 100 gorillion bajillion. I'm not skipping anyone. But man, oh man, I do feel bad that I feel like it was a bit of a low effort show. I didn't mean it that way. I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion / debate. But yeah. Bry, $5 says the debate with Zero Spurg is really refreshing. I don't agree with UBI, but that guy calmly presented his arguments. Keep up the good work, Rob. Thank you. By the way, I always appreciate talking to people in their areas of expertise. Like that to me that's what I want to talk to the people that know the most about what they're talking about. So, look at this. The legend that he is, Pix Paradox. $100. Thank you so much. Says, let's effing go. To the Norons, the Normal America audience. intelligent conversation debate with some guy on monetary policy. Whip songs. My life. I think it's these songs that made me sick, if I'm honest. All right, I owe 2. What am I doing here? All right, here we go. We heard this one last night. I think this one's well liked. I don't know. Not by me. They're all well hated. Here we go.
Where there's a whip, where there's a way, where there's a whip, there's a way, where there's a whip, there's a way, where there's a whip, why left? Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. We don't wanna go to war today, but the Lord of the Land says nay, nay, nay. We gotta march all day, all day, all day. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a whip, wait, there's a way. Where there's a whip, wait, there's a way. There's a whip, right, left, right, left, right, left. There's a whip, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Left, right. None of the back says we're gonna fight, we're gonna march all day and night and marvel. We are the slaves of the dark Lord's war. There's a will with a will, with a will. There's a way. There's a will with a will. There's a way. Whoa. There's a whip, right, left, right, left, right, left. There's a whip, right, left, right, left, right, where there's I. Crack my brother face and get it fight back of that. We're gonna march all day and night and more, for we are the slaves of the dark Lord's war.
Oh, Truth Revolt TV. Thank you for the $10. Is you guy got back to me, and now I'm getting a $7,000 check for the whip. I assume you're sending me at least half of that. Thank you, Truth Revolt. I appreciate it. That's another one. That puts us over 200. So I owe 2 more. And then mercifully, as long as the audience allows me, I will be. Oh, yeah. Dungeon Synth. Woohoo.
the slaves of the Dark Lord's war.
Hey, all right, Bry. $5 over on Rumble says, Rob, I've heard about Dinogate. As a competitor and injured party, please keep me and the rest of the chat up to date in the investigation. Hashtag Dinogate. I point you in the direction of my attorney, Ryan Mullally. All inquiries must go through him. Next. Ugh. Here we go. Oh. Now, someone, who was it? Over on Rumble, someone said, I think, yeah, Real Madrid was wanting Trippy too. There you go, my friend. Enjoy. All right. See, everyone says I don't read. I read the chat. I know what's up. I know. Bully Dog, $10 over on Rumble says, tell the YouTube side to suck it. Okay. That's not my words. That's Bully Dog's words. And then Real Madrid, $5. Thank you, says W. Thank you so much. On YouTube, Pix Paradox, $10 says, we called Brian first. Class action Dino Gate. Is that why I'm doing so poorly in that case? Ryan is working for the prosecution. Clayton Gordon, thanks for the buck, man. Oh, empty Alex. That is a very rude thing to say about, very rude thing to say about the YouTube people. Rumble's super chats are going to be about $30 right now. All right. I'm afraid to say it. It might be the rare night. I hate to even say it. This guy, this Austin Hall character, it's horrible to even consider. But could he be right tonight? 2 days ago, this guy says $357 a day is highly unreasonable. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was all for naught. It could be. I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? It's been a fun night. Do I have the deadly diary? I hope it's not deadly. Let's see what we got going on here. Oh. All right. Who's on? There we are. All righty. What's Cool Vic up to? He's got a bunch of people watching. Right over to Vic. Caleb's. You know what? I'm going to raid over to Caleb. I like Cool Vic, don't get me wrong, but he's got more people watching than me. So we'll raid over to Caleb. I got the monkey bucks. Don't say it. Oh, Daniel Graves. $100. What a G. Thank you, man. I didn't eat lettuce, I assure you. What a legend. Daniel Graves, thank you. That'll be 2 more songs. And then Hitakachi, $5 says, does it count as you alienating your audience? Yeah. Sure. All right. There we go. Does Cool Vic have a Rumble channel? I don't know. Oh, shit. That was very close to Disney. It would have been a mess.
A whip, there's a way. We don't want it. We don't want to go to war today, but the Lord of the Light says nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day. Where there's a way. There's a way, there's a way. Where there's a way. There's a way, there's a way. A crack on the back says we're gonna fight. We're gonna march all day and night and more. For we are the slaves of the Dark Lord's war. There's a way, there's a way.
Okay. Truth Revolt, $5 says there's 150 of us watching. If we all donate $5, we'll get 8 more whip songs. Look at that math. Very good. Oh, yeah, horse vocals.
I don't know if it went in the back chat, but Cool Vic is on Rumble.
Yeah. Thank you. I linked that over to the moment. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
There's a whip where there's a way. Where there's a whip, where there's a way. We don't want to go to war today, but the Lord of the Lash says nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Where there's a way. Where there's a whip, where there's a way. Where there's a whip, where there's a way. Left, right, left, right, left. Where there's a way. Left, right, left, right, left. Where there's a way. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Left, right. A crack on the back says we're gonna fight. We're gonna march all day and night and more. We are the slaves of the Dark Lord's war. Where there's a whip, where there's a way. Where there's a whip, where there's a way. We don't wanna go to war today, but the Lord of the Lash says nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day. Where there's a whip, there's a way. Left, right.
Have to sneeze. Sneezing is feminine. It's no good. Anyways, bless me. Look at this. J.W. Thorpe. Unreal. Thank you, man. $50. As you brought up Warren earlier. Fun fact, Janie Lane was asked to create a catchy single. He wrote the lyrics to Cherry Pie in 15 minutes. So it turns out he was responsible for his own legacy. So your analogies. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I know that he wasn't proud of it. He thought, that's amazing. Thank you. Let's go. Go. That's what you get for me today. And then Abby, $20. What an absolute hero. Pix Paradox finishes it off to get us exactly to 400 and another song. $10. Thank you. Built Right, $5 over on Rumble says, looking forward to seeing you all, you morons at DebateCon. Yeah, man, I'm very much looking forward to it. I'm going to be busy as shit. But it's always a pleasure to get out and see people in real life. It's funny because I think that, I don't know, maybe I'm speaking out of place here, but I consider myself a Crucible fan. And seeing all the Crucible people out, as also just a member of the audience community and as a streamer, it's really amazing. We always have a lot of fun. So if you can get out to DebateCon, it's going to be a blast. Now, having said that, unfortunately, because I got so much going on, I don't know how much time I'll have to actually. I'm assuming when we go out at night, I'll be there, but I'll be doing a lot of shit behind the scenes there. So. Oh, Crumping Kazoos. You know who created this version? I know who did.
I did.
That is right. It was Everest. All right. I always forget it starts with a K. I always look under C.
There's a whip. There's a whip. Well, there's a whip. There's a way. There's a way. We don't want to go to war today, but the Lord of the Last said, nay, nay, nay. We're gonna march all day, all day, all day, all day, all day. There's a whip. Where there's a whip, there's a whip. There's a whip. There's a whip. There's a whip. Where there's a whip. There's a whip. There's a whip. There's a whip. Where there's a whip. There's a whip. There's a whip. There's a whip. Left, right. Left, right. A crack on the back says we go down to fight. We're gonna march all day and night and more. For we are the slaves of the dark Lord's war.
Hey! Amazing. Where am I at? All right. Well, we're officially $100 away on Rumble now, or on YouTube now. So that could be it. I don't predict any more whip songs. It's been a show. Has it been a good show? I don't know. I feel like I've had better. I only got up to throw up once, though. So, is anyone else in that? My philosophy is like, as long as you're not contagious, if you're sick, you might as well be working. Right? What the fuck? Might as well. That's how I always felt. On Rumble, I think we're around $40, so you'd need $60 to have a whip song on Rumble. Hope I get over this in the next day or two. A little bit of a bummer, the T-ball game I went to with my son, because I'll be down at DebateCon. His last game's going to occur over that week, and I won't be able to see it. So this was the last T-ball game. I'll get to see my son this year. He's getting better, too. He's having fun. It's a blast, man. You all should get married and have kids. It's the fucking best. Nothing better. Just everything else is like here. Hanging out with the wife and kid. So good. It's nice to just even sit in a room and watch TV with them. That's nice. Just something about it. I don't know. We're not done yet, says Clayton. Well, we'll see, I guess. Empty Alex thinks that crumping kazoos was too light on the kazoos. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. Get over it.
We
The
all
sickness of the
did.
T-bone. It was too late in the kazoo, you think?
Yeah, we was hoping for all kazoos.
There's a lot of crumping, but not a lot of kazoos. That's the problem. Look, I think I've gotten better at the prompts. So I think the more recent ones I've been doing have been better. I'm putting more work into it. Believe it or not. I'm basically an artist. I know how to put the prompts into the AI. So, all right. Oh, well, for Caleb, we'll put out the Spurg clip. Here we go. Jews. Now I'm good. Now I'm speaking the truth. We did it. We did it. Have one more baby. Maybe. I'm getting old. Getting old. All right. Thank you to Avarice and my editor, Black Elk, all of my wonderful moderators. Thank you to everyone who donated tonight. Thanks to Alex Howlett that called in. I appreciated that. Thanks to everyone who watched tonight. I apologize. It wasn't as high energy as usual. Caleb's not streaming now. Okay. Well, then let's change that. I do apologize for that, but I definitely look, I know I'm going to be traveling and it's going to be harder to stream. So I want to make sure that I'm trying to stream every day possible to not cheat people out. So I thought it was important to come up and plow through the stream. So I hope it was enjoyable.
You know, you want to do like a high energy Bricky on a rant? We haven't done Bricky.
Now?
I mean, we could raid Bricky.
Oh! Sure.
He's
Why
live.
do I not have his... He's not saved for me. I got Cool Vic on. That's all I had. Let me see. He's playing chess. Is that what's going on now?
Well, they're playing chess and yelling at each other.
Oh,
It's
okay.
Bricky.
All right, we'll raid
Something.
Bricky. Yeah. All right, Bricky it is. All right, high energy Bricky. All right. So I appreciate all of you. Look, as always, at the end of the show, I just want to say a moment to remember the life of Charlie Kirk and what the stakes are, how they assassinated him, attacked his wife, attacked his family. Never forget, they didn't take him out because he was radical. They took him out because he was effective. And the way that our country is going, make no mistake, your children and your grandchildren will face these lunatics in power if we don't do something to stop them now. So I'm not saying you have to be miserable. I'm not saying you have to use violence or do anything that's unethical, but it is important to stay motivated, to keep pushing for political and cultural outcomes to try to stop those sort of things from occurring. So say a prayer for Charlie Kirk and his family. I will be back tomorrow. I think tomorrow, extravaganza, 5:30 on the Crucibles Rumble channel. I think I will be joined by Andrew tomorrow is the plan. And then I'll be back here tomorrow night at 10 p.m. unless I have crippling illness. I think I'll be all right, though. All right, thanks, everyone. I appreciate you all, especially on a day like this when I didn't feel good. It means a lot, so thank you so much. We'll talk to you all soon. Enjoy the raid of Bricky, as always. Have a good one.
Only in America is it possible to say, you know what, I don't like the way the country is going, and to do something about it. Take that risk. Take that leap of faith. Stay involved. Trust God and act obediently. Romans 12:2 verse. That God will use all things for good for those who love him. It's bigger than you. I want you to remember that. It is bigger than you. It's bigger than me. You are here to make somebody else's life better, the pursuit of liberty and freedom. You know what gives me strength? The hundreds of thousands of you that say, Charlie, keep going.
1 Corinthians 5 and 15. So that's all pretty amazing evidence, not just intra-biblical evidence, but extra-biblical evidence that Jesus Christ was a real person. He lived a perfect life. He was crucified, died, and rose on the third day, and he is Lord and God of all.